Welcome back to the Reading and Writing Podcast. My guest today is Kiare Ladner, author of the debut novel, Night Shift. Kiare, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm glad to be on it.
Sure. Well, if someone hasn't yet heard about your debut novel, Night Shift, how would you describe the novel?
I think it's a dark, edgy, coming-of-age story set in London's night shift world. And at one level, we follow the narrator, Maggie, who's 23 and South African, as she becomes increasingly obsessed with Sabine, who's also 23 and Belgian. But on another level, the novel explores what happens when you meet the person you want to be and how far can you go in losing yourself in order to come closer to who you really are.
And I'm curious, do you remember the original idea or impetus that led you to write Night Shift?
It was a conflation of many things, including a deep feeling for young people who want to be other than what they are, and a sadness for missed connections and friendships and relationships that burn and die. And then for a long time, I had wanted to write something set in the night shift world.
Sure. And was that a world that you were familiar with yourself?
Very much so, yes. I did. It's the one part of the book that that draws on completely autobiographical information is the job. I did the same job that Maggie does. Cutting out crime articles, summarizing crime articles for clients overnight. I did that for about a year and 8 months. I think doing night shifts was such a massive thing. It really changed the way that I saw nights and the city and time. And all of those things kind of changed my perspective a bit. And so it stuck with me. And I always wanted to write something at some point in that setting.
That's great. Well, what was your fiction writing journey that led you to writing and getting your debut novel published?
It's been a long journey because I think I've always loved writing. Well, not always. I think... from when I went to drama school originally after school, and I'd wanted to be an actor, and I wasn't very far into that when I realized I actually wanted to be a writer. I wanted something much more introverted, and so since then I wanted to write, but I did it just for myself for many, many, many years, and with whatever job I had, I would make sure that I woke up so that I could have 3 hours before I had to get ready for work in which to write. The truth is I didn't write for 3 hours. I listened to music and drank coffee. And then I think when I was high enough on those two things, I would probably write for half an hour or something. But I did this consistently for a long, long time. And I wasn't even sure if I ever wanted to be published. I just wanted to write. And then eventually I decided to join a writing workshop. And that sort of changed everything for me in a way. It was a wonderful workshop with a wonderful tutor, the late John Petherbridge. And we would have this, 3 hours of workshopping each other's work on a Saturday, then go to the pub afterwards. And the whole experience was very special. I've met some of my closest friends there. Even my partner. So
That's great.
I think joining a group, and I went on to do, various things. I got funding for an MA at the University of East Anglia, so I did that, and that of course gave full-time time to write, which was incredible. And then I wanted more. So I got funding for a PhD in creative writing, which again gave full, I could write full time. And that was amazing. And I think all these courses and these groups and so on, I think they're really good if you do want to write something that is going to be publishable.
Sure. And what was the submission process like for you once you finished Night Shift? Did you submit to agents, and how did that work?
It's actually quite a funny story because it was all kind of back to front. So I was doing my PhD and I was doing short stories for it, but I was very slow. I changed what I was doing halfway through and I was really behind, and I only had a few months left and I needed 50,000 words of fiction. So I thought, well, I can't do 50,000 words of short stories in this short amount of time. I have to write something longer. So I wrote Night Shift. And I'm an extremely slow writer. So it was all kind of crazy because I felt like I had a gun at my head, so I had to do it. So I pushed the words out. And I wrote it and then my supervisor suggested I send it to someone he knew who was a commissioning editor, and I hadn't even edited it myself and so on. And I did, and I heard nothing. And I thought, oh, well, that's normal in the writing world. You hear nothing. And then a few months later, I suddenly got this email in my inbox, and it went, "We would like to offer you X amount to publish Night Shift."
Oh, wow.
And I thought, what? I didn't have an agent or anything.
That's the kind of email everyone dreams about.
I know. But it's terrible when you get an email like that. Then your email box becomes this magical thing that you think might deliver these things from time to time. But then a couple of agents had shown interest, so I sent it to them, and I went with the agent who was the most critical because I thought that would be best for my long-term career as a writer. Mm-hmm. And she sent it out to publishers, gave them kind of 48 hours to respond because, I don't know, once there's an offer on the table, suddenly you're in a different reality. And then Picador preemptively made an offer. And
that's great.
That and then I was so excited when Mariner Books in the United States wanted to publish it too. That was like really fantastic.
That's great. Well, what was your writing process when you did? You said you had to write these 50,000 words. Are you a writer who, when you were working on Night Shift and you had that kind of self-imposed deadline, did you outline the novel, or was it more of just kind of diving into the narrative? What was your process like when you were trying to meet that deadline and get the 50,000 words written?
It was, no, I didn't plan it or outline it. I've never successfully done that. I think it's important to understand how story structure works, but sure. It's never worked for me to do that. So I think I started it more or less in the same way that I often start my short stories, where I write a whole lot of bits, and then I kind of see if there's a voice coming through, and I see if the bits are in conversation with each other, and if I can see a way forward. And then I think with my writing, I don't plan, but usually two things happen that make me feel like something has legs. And the one is when I find a voice that I feel I want to continue in and sustain and explore, and I found the voice of the story. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing is, it's weird. It's almost something mathematical. It's like I sort of imagine characters as X and Y, and I see this sort of equation of how how things work with X and Y, or whatever, and how the, I suppose, how the tension increases,
sure,
and where it will drop. And then and then when I started writing it, I started writing it as letters. So it started very differently.
Right.
It was kind of letters from a middle-aged woman to a much younger woman whom she was wanting to be of use to in a way, because she had basically the night shift story in the back of her mind. But then that character just got kind of, that character got cut out. And I also initially wanted to tell the story as like a walking trip over London, which, I think I've said in another interview, I spent sort of 2 weeks planning this walking trip, but that also got lost. Where the planning process did come in was once I had written Night Shift, which I wrote extremely quickly, and then I wrote down all the scenes that I had, and then I kind of ordered them and put them into parts. And I mean, it was mostly I'd written it chronologically, right. But still, it was at that point that I kind of worked, tried to see where does it dip, what, where are there duplications and something needs to go. Where does there need to be more escalation of tension, etc.
Well, I think if you ever wanted to write a nonfiction book about writing, I think that, examining that process of the equation, I think you might want to keep that in mind. So I'm curious, are you working on a new novel now? Hey, this is Jeff, the host of the Reading and Writing Podcast. There's a podcast that I want to let you know about, Coffee in Space. Dan Smith, the host, has conversations with authors about the science fiction characters we love and the journeys they take. In each episode of the Coffee in Space podcast, you'll also learn about the world building and any science behind the science fiction that makes the story sing. It's a great way to learn more about a book you already love or find a new book to fall in love with. Head over to www.coffeeinspacepodcast.com to learn more. Coffee in Space is available on all the major listening apps. Listen to an episode or 2 or 3 today. That's Coffee in Space Podcast.
Yes, I am, but it's a baby. It's like, I don't know what it is.
Sure.
Yeah. and it hasn't yet got legs, so we'll have to see.
That's great.
But I'm hoping, I'm feeling like, I'm feeling like, I hope it works out.
That's good.
That's not quite being hopeful, but anyway.
Well, I'm curious, what writing advice would you offer for those who are working on their own stories or novels?
Yeah, I think it depends what stage you're at. So I also teach writing, short story writing, novel writing, novella writing to students, and I think there's a time for being in your cave. When you just need to keep it to yourself, nurture it in the ways that you want, not judge it, obviously. And a time when you don't need feedback, when it's best just to let the thing start to grow in its own way. But then I think there comes a time for treating it as work. And I think that's often the time where it can be useful to join a writing group or course or something. On courses that often the people I've learned the most from have been other students, But I think treating it as work enables you to have a little bit of a distance, and it makes you more open to trying new things, to listening to people's opinions. And I've just seen time and time again the writers who succeed in writing a publishable novel. After that, whether it gets published or not, there is of course a strong degree of luck involved. But I think getting it to that phase, the people I've seen who've succeeded with that have been those who really, they're workers. They roll up their sleeves and work at it. And it just means being very humble in that way. I think that's what I've seen in other people. And it also takes a lot of determination, a novel.
Sure. Well, what novels have you read recently that you enjoyed?
I loved a novel by Daughter North called Mirror Shoulder Signal. It was really terrific. I hadn't read anything by her before, so that was new, and it's set in Copenhagen and thereabouts. I also I've read a couple of experimental novels recently partly I mean, I read them ordinarily every now and then whenever I want to or whatever, but this has been with the intention of looking at how they're structured. What makes a lot of people write in a way that's quite experimental, but it sometimes feels like it works, and sometimes it feels like it's kind of a bit of a jumble. And so I was kind of interested in what makes these books work, and they were both two terrific books. The one was Sterling Carat Gold by Isabel Weidner, which actually won the Goldsmiths Prize, and it's got a lot of heart. It's a terrific little book. And the other one was Harrow by Joy Williams, which, Joy Williams is great. A book that comes from, I guess, quite a different place in the writer's life. She's a very experienced writer.
Right.
It was interesting looking at it and going, what makes it stick together? What is the glue?
Sure. Well, where can people find you online if they want to learn more about you and your novel?
Oh, cool. I've got a website, www.kiareladner.com. Anyone should feel free to contact me. There's a contact form on that if they want to say hi or whatever. And I'm on Instagram as well, quite new to that. Yeah, so that's it.
That's great. Well, again, we've been speaking with Kiare Ladner, author of the debut novel Night Shift. The novel is on sale now, so go buy a copy. And Kiare, thanks for doing this interview.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. Thanks, Jeff.
Wonderful. Now, stay tuned for a brief excerpt from the audiobook of Night Shift by Kiare Ladner, read by Olivia Darnley. Available from Harper Audio, wherever audiobooks are sold.
At its peak, my obsession with her was like a form of self-harm, a private source of pain and comfort. When I found the ring box in the back of the drawer, I didn't want to open it. Navy and heart-shaped, it has a finely brocaded border and thin silver hook. The lining is pearly satin indented to hold a delicate jewel. A market seller provided it for a sard ring I'd bought, shoving the chunky band determinedly into the slot. I could have saved him the trouble. I'd no need for the box, yet was captivated by its fairy tale charm. On leaving the stall, I slid the ring onto my finger and smoothed the satin back into a tight clasp. For almost 2 decades, I haven't looked at what's inside the box. Simply having it in the room will hopefully pull me through my task. When doubts hover close, I move it about restlessly. I place it behind my computer as if its reliquary power can channel through the screen or hide it far away on the windowsill by the moldy coffee cups. Getting up from my desk, I pace the room with it in my palm. Since being unable to sleep, I've passed through a shadow curtain. The present has become dark and stagnant. The past circles vividly around me. Sharp memories cut through chronology's thin skin. In the strange energy of these insomniac nights, I have begun to write as consolation. To make a story that will put an end to reliving flash fragments, to remembering only the most troubling details. Easily, I slip back to the day I first saw her. I had a job in media monitoring. We provided clients in cars and construction with daily updates of press content. The articles were selected by senior analysts. My work was to write the summaries. Given that copying out the opening paragraphs brought no complaints, I wasn't motivated to do much more. Excused from staff meetings due to client deadlines, I'd twirl about in my office chair. Shutting my eyes, I'd picture the second floor, open plan and strip lit. The boards separating cubicles decorated with photographs of loved ones, families and pets. One neighbour's neat lineup of sharpened pencils. Another's orderly stack of chamomile and fennel teas. My desk, strewn with tire-related articles, my board pinned with ideas for me and Graham, my boyfriend. The drawn conference room blinds meant I didn't need to picture my conventionally dressed colleagues, who were, in turn, spared the sight of me, a woman in a bobbly jumper and jeans with a mid-length tangle of orange hair. No matter how often I played the game, when I looked again, my surroundings would be both as I'd visualized them and not. The concrete materiality of the objects was identical, but the colors, the quality of light, the atmosphere were subtly different. See, I'd tell myself, you don't know it all. Things change. You can't predict how they'll seem in 30 seconds, never mind till the end of time.
Hey, this is Jeff, the host of the Reading and Writing Podcast. There's a podcast that I want to let you know about, Coffee in Space. Dan Smith, the host, has conversations with authors about the science fiction characters we love and the journeys they take. In each episode of the Coffee in Space podcast, you'll also learn about the world building and any science behind the science fiction that makes the story sing. It's a great way to learn more about a book you already love or find a new book to fall in love with. Head over to www.coffeeinspacepodcast.com to learn more. Coffee in Space is available on all the major listening apps. Listen to an episode or 2 or 3 today. That's Coffee in Space Podcast.